Right, so let's just say this story is fictional, and I can't tell the full story because I have to sort of be polite to people. Yeah. So I have an older relative. We'll say his name is Mark, and Mark's wife is named Trisha. Mark and Trisha, they're about 10 years older, and this happened about probably 7 years ago, something like that. So I was with Tara, my ex, and and we were doing a lot of drugs at the time. We were tripping a lot and also doing a lot of Mandy, and I think we'd started to do less Mandy and we were like tripping more. Mandy is MDMA, and we were like tripping a bit more around this time. We were first starting to get into like other things because we'd had a pretty bad period of like MDMA abuse, and one of those things was acid, and we had some acid and some MDMA, and we were planning a weekend with these two older relatives, Mark and Trisha, and the plan was just to do MDMA, and Mark was going to get involved, and he didn't usually get involved with things like that, and I really wanted to. I felt it would be really good to do that. Sometimes there's certain people you sort of want to do things like MDMA with. You think it might be like a good, a beneficial experience for yourself or the two of you or for them, and that was the case. So I was really excited because it was like finally seemed to be happening, like we were going to do MDMA, and I thought, oh, that'd be great, because they had like a kind of they were living in a pretty big place at the time, and they I guess they had time off or something, so we were sort of planning a big weekend. And so I got there really excited for this, and Trisha told me, yeah, Mark's gonna do MDMA with us, and it's gonna be really good. And I was like, wow, that's fucking crazy, I can't wait. And got there, and Mark did not seem at all interested in doing MDMA. It seemed like maybe that had never been on the table to begin with. Either it had been a lie, or he'd agreed to it without realising, or he had agreed to it and just completely changed his mind. But either way, clearly it was not on the agenda for him, really. And he'd invited some of his mates round, and they were like, again, older, like his age, and kind of like lads, kind of like blokes, kind of like football, like blokes, and nothing wrong with that. I like football, but it's not what I was expecting, and yeah, I had sort of prepared, for MDMA, and so it was kind of weird already. One of them was the Parcel Force man who worked for Parcel Force and had somehow become a friend of theirs, and he was a very, from my experience, my dealings with him, a very simple man. That's what I would say. He liked a beer, he liked football, and in general he seemed a very simple man, quite a portly fellow. And he was there, and that was because the other guy who would have been invited, I knew him and he was cool, and that was like, it was a bit strange that he was there, but it was whatever. But the Parcel Force man, that was like a bit of a pill to swallow. I was like, fuck, the Parcel Force man is here? Like, that's pretty weird. I didn't really want to hang out with the Parcel Force man tonight. So then it kind of became clear that me and Tara and Trisha were going to do drugs, and the other three were just going to drink and like maybe watch some football and just hang out. So it kind of put me with the ladies and them kind of as like the men, which already I was feeling a little bit like, okay, this is a bit, just all of this just feels a bit weird. But yeah, no, whatever, it was what it was. And so then I have to have to think here. Basically, someone had the drugs and was like, it's MDMA, we're going to do MDMA. And then someone also had some some acid. And someone was like, hey, Trisha, do you want some acid as well? And she was like, I don't know, will it make me trip? And me and Tara were like, maybe, kind of. And by the way, this was a long time ago. I would never, ever, 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 nor would this other person I'm referring to, treat acid in this way, so flippantly, at all. This was a really long time ago, probably more than 7 years ago, to be honest. I think this was like 9 years ago, 8 years ago. It's a long time. Very immature mindset around drugs. And she was like, yeah, will this make me trip? This thing that someone is offering me. And we were like, yeah, kind of. Obviously, the answer was yes. Yes, it will. And I don't really understand what our motivation was, but I guess for us, I don't think we'd ever taken this combo before, but we were fairly convinced it would be good and that any negative effects of the trip would be cancelled out by the MDMA, which broadly speaking is true with this combination. So I would say giving it to someone when they're on MDMA is a lot less serious than giving it to someone when they're sober, which is probably 10 or 20 times more likely to give them like a bad trip, because we were not hugely confident trippers either. But again, this combo just felt like, psychologically at least, maybe not physically, much safer. So anyway, so we all took these drugs, and we're hanging out, and immediately it was weird. Like, the Parcel Force man, Mark, and his mate, his other mate that wasn't the Parcel Force man, they were hanging out. I think they were like playing cards, they were watching football highlights and stuff. And it became immediately tense. It became a tense environment. And it was weird. And then the music, like, Mark has very bad taste in music, probably the worst taste in music of anyone I've ever known properly in my life. I'm not counting like, sort of random people I've met, but like people I've encountered, but people I actually know, I think Mark has, apart from maybe like my mum or something, the worst taste in music. I think my mum has worse taste in music, but really bad taste in music. So we were getting this strange mix of stuff that was very of its time. It was like, there would be like a song from the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. There's nothing against it. It's a good soundtrack. But then it would be like Rockstar by NERD, and then like Crawling by Linkin Park, and then like Clocks by Coldplay, and then like something by like some girl pop group, and then like it was just a mess. It was a real mess of just tosh from like the sort of 90s, maybe the early noughties. It was a serious mess. And I was like really like a music snob at the time. So I was really, I was like, this really won't fucking do, I really need to change this. And I kept being like, can I put stuff on? And at the time I was really into Good Kid, Mad City, and he had a copy of that. I think I had bought him. And I kept asking, can I put this on? Because like we were like trying to come up and we were playing snooker. And I think by this point, Trisha had started to be a bit strange, and it was a bit difficult to talk to her, and nothing was really happening yet. I think the acid was starting to kick in somehow a bit before the MDMA had fully taken hold, but I think the MDMA wasn't really taking hold properly because it was a very weird atmosphere, and it was making it quite hard to come up. And I think in general, when you're around people who are not, it's quite disconcerting and you feel strange. So we were, for some reason, me and Tara at this moment were like off playing snooker and listening to this music and just being like, fucking hell, this is like really unbearable. Like, can't really feel the MDMA and this music. And also the speakers were in the next room over, and so they had the music up really loud so they could hear it over there. We were in the room with the speakers. It was getting really unbearable. And I think we went and found Trisha again, and she was like, because we just left her just chilling because she was just being kind of quiet and she seemed to want to chill. Then we found her again, and she was kind of like, she wasn't making much sense, basically. She was talking about, like, she was happy, you know, she wasn't having a bad time, but she was like, it's so weird, I'm on the floor, can't believe this, I'm sitting on the floor in my house. And we were like, yeah, you're on the floor, that's wild. And she was like, this is just so crazy, I'm just sitting here on the floor. And we were like, yeah, you're on the floor, alright. Well, and then like I guess we started hanging out with her for a bit, and I remember at one point we went outside. I was with the two of them, and they had, by this point, Trisha and Tara had both put on like pink fluffy dressing gowns because Trisha had a spare one, and like slippers and stuff. And I started to feel quite embarrassed at this point to be around them, because like, you know, like the lads were in the next room and they sort of glancing over at us being really weird and like giggling. And I started to feel, very self-conscious. And then we went outside. The lads were all inside, and there's like a big glass wall, like, you know, out onto the garden. And we went outside, and we went round the side of the house. And then we went round to the side where this big glass wall is, right next to like where they were playing cards. And one of those automatic lights came on. And for a second, all three of us were kind of like I jumped, you know, because we were tripping and stuff and starting to come up. So it was like quite like, you know, it was like, like the light suddenly came on. It was really bright, and it probably felt much brighter than it was. Quite quickly, instantaneously, basically, I was like, okay, it's just a light that's come on. And then Trisha and Tara were like, it was sort of the way someone would react if like they were really inebriated and then like a police helicopter was above and the spotlight was shining down on them, you know. They started like, they were like holding on to me and like swaying around. It was like they were in the sea or something, and they were like, and like they were kind of laughing but like kind of screaming, you know. Like they were just like, it was like after the initial, you know, moment of the light coming on, there was nothing to react to, but it was as though the light was like they were like vampires or something. It was really weird. And everyone was just there, like literally like a meter away from us behind the window, just staring at us. And I start getting like kind of annoyed. And I'm like, guys, come on, let's go. Like, this is fucking ridiculous. Like, let's go inside. And as we went inside, and then we started tripping quite a lot, like pretty heavily. And it was really, I mean, beautiful in a sense. It's eerie and beautiful at the same time. Candy flipping, like it's not too eerie, but you can't avoid the kind of eeriness of the acid, even when you're on Mandy. But you take it differently emotionally, but it's still got that kind of eerie feeling to it. And so we were like in the garden, and I remember just like being like, okay, now it's like really kicking in. We're all sitting there, and Trisha was being still strange, like definitely strange, and not making a great deal of sense, and no, it's hard to find a way to explain it, but we were starting to think like, was this a mistake, you know, like all of this, like should we have just sort of done something like this on our own, you know? But it was too late, and I wouldn't say Trisha had the best night overall. It definitely wasn't the worst. I've seen people have much worse times, but it seemed disorienting for her. Disorienting. I feel both are acceptable, but I don't know. She seemed a bit discombobulated, you know, throughout the experience. Not terribly coherent, not totally easy to read emotionally, and just confused. And at this point, she started to really become confused. And I think acid, like, is something you can either kind of go with or it just confuses you. I've experienced a lot of both, I guess. So she started to get very confused, and then I guess, like, and again, not the most mature way to handle the situation, but also we thought, like, she's all right, and our presence isn't really helping, so we were kind of trying to find ways we could hang out a bit by ourselves and just, like, walk around, kind of, like, and just chill together, because at this time we were very fixated on our drug experiences and our weekends. It was like our escape from the pain of real life, so we wanted to really enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? We were sort of like, oh, we've got to, when you get older in situations like that, you sort of think, well, that's not really what's important here, is just us enjoying it. But then when you're dependent on something, it was sort of like, we've got to enjoy ourselves. And that was why the music was bothering us as well. Again, it's something where you just say, the music's the music, it's not really my house and whatever. But it was, and later on, eventually we went in, and then later on he agreed I could put the Kendrick Lamar album on. And it's not a very good album to put on for socializing, to be honest, but at that age I was just like, I just want to listen to whatever I like. I don't really think about whether it's the right thing to put on or whatever. I just liked it a lot and wanted to listen to it. And because I remember when that album first came out, man, I fucking loved it. I listened to it all the time. It's so good. I'd never listened to it now, like, ever. I haven't gone back at all since, but yeah, I fucking loved it. But anyway, yeah, immediately it was a bit weird having it on, because I remember, like, there was the first couple tracks, then there's, like, backseat freestyle, and it was not that type of thing. And these again were, like, sort of older guys and, like, footballish lads, and, like, at that time, this was 9 years ago, people like that didn't really listen to, like, Kendrick Lamar, and it was just weird having that on. And then immediately he was like, you have to turn this off, and we were like, okay. And then we were sort of, like, a bit, like, banished from that part of the house from then on. But to be honest, playing snooker whilst candy flipping in a weird social environment with, like, music you don't like, it's not really the best way to appreciate the experience anyway. So I guess we kind of went a little bit from pillar to post for the rest of the night. We didn't do any one specific thing or stay in any one specific place. But we kind of went around, and I just remember at various moments Trisha was having quite a bad not a bad time like actively bad, just like at one point she was with her dog, and she has a lovely dog, and she really loves her dog, and she was with her dog and she was sitting with it on the sofa, and I remember she was petting it, and she was kind of smiling, and it's kind of like wicked grin, and she had the dog's head and she had the dog's ears. I remember thinking, man, she's really petting that dog aggressively. Like, she was rubbing its head and being like, and, like, smiling kind of, like, maniacally. And then she was getting the ears and kind of, like, running her hands around the ears and, like, twist. I just remember the image of, like, this dog's ears, like, twisted around her hands, and the dog was kind of looking at us, like, and she was just like, and then, we'll have to fake the name for the dog as well. We'll say the dog's name is Shelley. It coined a famous catchphrase between me and Tara, because we saw her with the dog, and then, like, there was all this stuff on TV about like the war in Syria, I think, was happening at the time. There was, like, really horrible footage on TV, on the news, like, really, like, nasty stuff, and she was there with the dog, and then we just, like, didn't really want to didn't want to hang out, so we were like, all right, we'll leave you to your Shelley then, and, like, walked off. I don't remember which one of us said we'll leave you to your Shelley, but it wasn't a joke. It was we were trying to be polite and be like, it was trying to make small talk as we kind of exited the room. We were like, we'll leave you to your Shelley then, and sort of walked off. Like, she hadn't requested that we leave. There was no reason why, really, other than that we didn't want to be there, that we should leave. And then all the footage on the screen was just, like, people, had been, like, bombed and stuff. And we left, and then as we left, we were kind of looking at each other like, is that crazy that we just left? Who knows? Yeah, we would just periodically sort of check in. I remember we were outside for ages, and we went quite far away from the house. I remember looking through the windows, and and everyone was like stood around her. She was on the sofa, and they were all like standing in the room, like kind of like, you know, talking to her while she was like down there on the sofa. And it just looked very like, it looked like the vibe of like an intervention, you know. It looked like it was all very serious, and it wasn't like urgent. It wasn't like an emergency. You could tell because like they were just sort of standing, they weren't doing anything. But I was just thinking, what's going on in that room? You know, these three guys who are just like drinking beers, and they're talking to her, and she's just like, they, I think, didn't know for most of the night that we were tripping as well. They knew we were doing drugs, but they didn't know we were tripping. And there was another moment where Trisha was looking at her hands, and she was like, whoa, like my hands look so old or something. And then she's still just like playing with the dog. The dog was around a lot, and the dog seemed like the dog was not loving it. I think the dog wasn't really enjoying the overall energy, but she was like really wanted to be with the dog all the time. And she had the dog there, and she was like looking at her hands, and she was like, yeah, something like my hands look so old. And then she said to Tara, and at this time, like they're in their like early 30s, I guess, which is weird now because they seem older when I remember it, you know. And she said to Tara, how old do you think I am? And Tara was like, I don't know, like 40? And she was like, no, I'm only 32 or something. And Tara was like, oh. But at this point, Trisha was still like very much tripping and like, you know, having a weird one. And that was just another piece of information she was left with, as well as like, you know, the war in Syria and all these strange things going on around her. But there was not much we could do really to, I don't know. Yeah, you know, we were kind of in a state ourselves. So yeah, we were just jamming about and doing stuff. And then I remember at one point I went in, I was on my own for some reason. And I went and Parcel Force Man was on his own in the living room, and he was watching football highlights. And I don't remember what I said. I remember I sat down next to him, and I was really fucked, and I was thinking like, oh, I don't know what to say. Like, this is weird. And he didn't like me, Parcel Force Man. And he was just staring straight forward at the TV, at Sky Sports. And then he said something about, eventually after a long silence, he said something about Alan Pardew. And he was like, yeah, Pardew's blah, 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 you know, something about Pardew. Alan Pardew is a football manager. And I just remember turning around and being like, blah, 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 and just like saying something. And I remember he just like looked at me and just stared, but he was just like, he looked sort of just completely like, it's just like, what? And he just stared at me, and I couldn't remember what I had said. And then he just looked away, and then it was just silence for about 3 minutes until I just quietly got up and left the room. And so that was the extent pretty much of my interaction with Parcel Force Man that night. And then Mark, I guess he found out that we were tripping, and he was curious about it, and it was really near the end of the night. Like, you know, we were starting to sort of wind down from everything to some degree. And having a bit of a weird time by this point, because like we couldn't really hang out with Trisha, because it was kind of impossible. Sorry, the camera cut out. So yeah, Mark started talking to us, and it was like late, you know, at this point, and he was like asking us about acid, and he just started asking strange questions, as he sometimes does, that were like, it was like, so, you know, like, what are you two doing with your life and stuff? And we were like, and then he was like, you're just gonna do this all the time? And we were like, no, we don't really. And then he was like, you're gonna have kids? We were like, not sure. He was like, what, you're gonna have kids and then you're gonna be just doing acid at the weekend? And we were like, don't know, like probably not if we had kids, you know, and just like weren't really. And he was just being like, and he just couldn't. It was like one of his first times hearing about acid, and he was like, acid doesn't sound very nice, does it? So, and I was thinking like, yeah, fair enough, it doesn't really sound very nice. And then he started being like, can you give me some? And we were like, no, like that would be crazy because it lasts a really long time. And he was like, what if you just give me a little bit? And it was like, it's really just, like you've been drinking all night, it's late, it would be crazy to give you like a little bit of acid now, you'll just stay up for like no reason and stuff. And yeah, I think by that point Trisha had gone to bed, which was kind of mad because we were still, at the very least, at least in terms of like energy and stimulation, we were still kind of buzzing. But Trisha had gone to bed at this point. And then I think we were now like, I think it's time to leave, It was getting a bit weird there. We just really wanted to go, and we hadn't been having a very good time, and we hadn't been communicating very much with one another because we just felt really weird being there, and we felt like, there was another moment. I was complaining to Tara about how I was like, I'm finding this really like embarrassing, all of it, and I was like, can you guys, because there was a point where it was all a bit fucking mad. Like, it was quite early on in the night actually, but there was a point where it was just very like, it was so long ago I don't remember everything that well, but there was a point where it was just there was a lot of judgment coming from the lads. Like, they were like looking at us a lot, like a lot of attention being drawn to us that was just not necessary and was clearly making a bad atmosphere. And the two of Tara and Trisha were both being pretty weird. Not as much Tara, but they were kind of a bit more together. They had the pink dressing gowns and shit, and I was kind of like, I was being quite serious at this point and just like getting a bit uncomfortable about everything. And it was an open plan house, and I was saying to her while the music was on, I was like, can you two are like, can you guys like tone it down a bit, because this is all a bit like, it's a bit weird. And then we started saying something about Trisha, like it was along the lines of like, she was like, yeah, it's not really me though, is it? And I was like, no, fair enough. And then we started saying like something like, yeah, she's being pretty weird, like, it's not, what can we really do about it? And then I think we said something along the lines of like, we'll just try to like keep our distance from her a bit, which is not nice at all. But we were like, yeah, we'll try to keep our distance from her a bit. It was very contextual. I'm not really explaining the story well. Like, it wasn't that bad. It was kind of just the logical thing to do at this point. It wasn't in a mean way, but like, it was, yeah. And we were like, we'll try and keep our distance from her a bit. And right as we said that, the music like stopped, or someone turned it down. So basically everyone, including her and all of them, heard us saying this, which was really fucking weird. And anyway, she went to bed early, so we left, and we got in a taxi to go home, and we had to draw cash out. The taxi driver was a bit odd. Don't know where he's from exactly. He's a strange fella, and he was like chatting to us a bit, and we were just really like finding it weird to chat, and especially because it was mostly acid at this point. We weren't really tripping that much, and we both were clearly, we just a bit, back then as well, we were on edge around everyone and everything. We were very like sort of skittish and paranoid, and it started to feel like a bit weird, the taxi ride, and we had to stop to get money out. So I thought it was better if I went, which probably now I'd say it's the other way around. It's better if Tara goes out and gets the money, and I, but so anyway, Tara stayed in the taxi and I went and got money out. And then when I got back in the taxi, she was like poking my leg and looking at me and being like, and stuff like that, and like, or just like holding my hand or something. She was indicating like she was, she didn't feel, I don't think she was saying specifically something. I think maybe she just held my hand or something. It seemed in a way that seemed like she was sort of scared, and we were driving, and at this point I didn't know what had happened, but we were driving and I started getting uncomfortable, and then it got to a point where I was thinking like, okay, something weird's happening here, or something weird's going to happen, but we were quite far away from home, and we didn't really have like much way of getting home, and so I started thinking like, shit's gonna kick off, so like I might have to kill this guy. And so I got my keys like in my hand, thinking like, me and this taxi driver are about to have a fight. And I was just sitting there really tense the whole time, like waiting, like any minute now he's gonna fucking pull some shit, and it's gonna go down. And then he was driving, and then he went away, I guess. I mean, it was ridiculous because I never fucking drove anywhere. I had no sense of where we were. and he just went a certain way, and it wasn't where I was expecting him to go. And I was like, I immediately was like, whoa, mate, what are you doing? This isn't the way to Barnet. And he went, yeah, look, right there, and pointed to a sign. It was just a massive sign that just said Barnet in front of us, and I was like, okay, cool, and then sat back down and was again just like waiting, and he didn't do anything, needless to say, just took us home, and it was a very awkward, the rest of the taxi drive after I got back in, it was like, we were just silent the whole way and feeling so uncomfortable, and I was just thinking, God, just get out of this taxi, like, I was considering getting out early, but thought like, well, if he's gonna, I don't know, we were tripping, it wasn't, whatever, we weren't thinking clearly, the whole thing was a bit ridiculous anyway, so we just sort of were thinking like, yeah, we'll just wait and then, see what happens, and really tense ride home, and then we got back and we were both like, thinking, oh, that was really uncomfortable in the taxi and whatever. And she was like, yeah, he said really weird stuff to me when you were getting the money out. I was like, what did he say? And she said that he was like, were you guys at a party tonight? And she was like, kind of, like a small thing, not really a party. And he was like, I hate parties. The room fills up with smoke, and I just want to rip out my eyes. And but said it really intensely at her. And I guess while she was tripping, this felt like he was being threatening or something. He was an odd fellow, I must say. Before then, already he seemed odd. And he said something about wanting to rip out his eyes, which I guess was just a weird comment that just sounded bad. But to her at the time, while she was tripping, it was perceived as like, this guy's gonna like rip my eyes out or something. So we were getting out, and we were both like really unnecessarily weirded out by the taxi ride, and got in, and then we started doing more like MDMA, and we had a little bit left. We didn't have much, and the rest of the night, it was already really late at this point, and we ended up staying up for hours more, and feeling completely clear-headed and good. It was almost like we saved up a lot, because we didn't have a good time when we were there. It was like we almost saved it up, because I think like your brain has to go along with the experience for you to like produce the serotonin and to have the, so that we weren't like exhausted from it. It was like novel to be able to just feel like relaxed and free and able to just enjoy it. And so we then we were having tiny little bumps of MDMA with it. And that, I guess, mixed with the acid, it just drew the night out for so long. And it was probably certainly in terms of doing MDMA or kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say it was the best night I've ever had on anything, but it was one of the best in terms of the drugs, if you know what I mean. It was like the drugs were working really fucking well at this point. Like, it was really surprising. Kept thinking, any minute now we're going to start feeling like shit. And we just never did. And every time we'd have a tiny little bit, and then we'd feel fucking great. And we were walking around, and we basically started talking about the night. And it suddenly, at the time, it wasn't funny. The whole experience of the night was like unpleasant. And then we just realized, and basically there's a lot of stuff I'm not really saying or can't say or just would be whatever. But in retrospect, all of it was fucking hilarious. Like, it was just, we just spent the rest of the night, like hours and hours and hours, walking around and just like crying, laughing about this night. And then once in a while we'd go back, have a little bit more Mandy. The acid we didn't redose, I mean, I don't think you can really. And yeah, and we would just walk around for hours talking about it, just laughing so fucking much. At the time, it was the funniest night we'd ever experienced. Like, and it was one of those things we kept wanting to tell people about it, and it was like, you can't explain to someone how funny this is. Like, you can't. No one who wasn't there will understand how hilarious that night was, and like, and still, even when I think of it now, like, I can't quite. It was just so fucking funny to us, like the way everything had panned out. And to be honest, like the way she was being as well, and even just down to things like the taxi, and then to like the weird interrogation about if we're gonna have kids, and like Parcel Force Man being there and stuff, and like all the weird stuff with the dog and all these other things, and it was just like so fucking funny. And we were being quite like I don't know. I guess we were being quite like, our sense of humor is, I guess, quite like dark. And so the whole thing just became very, very funny. And then we started thinking like, but we didn't know what was up with Trisha, and we were sort of worrying about it, and we were waiting all night. And I think even before we went to bed, we heard from her having like woken up the next morning or something, because we spent like literally like half an hour trying to craft a text that was correctly worded to try and, we wanted to check in on how she was doing, but we didn't want to seem like we felt there was anything wrong to begin with, you know, like we were trying to be really casual, but we wanted to, so we came up with some text. I think it was like, oh, crazy night last night, lol, all good today, or something, which is easy to do, but it took us like half an hour to come up with this. We kept like rewriting it and shit, and we just remembered it so fondly, like, and would just fucking laugh about it all the time, but not as much as we did on the night. On the night it was like too funny, and then we were coming up with all these ideas for things, and just in such a good space for the latter part of the night, like such a good space. And it felt, what was odd was it felt clean physically. It didn't feel disgusting. I find MDMA, it feels disgusting. Like, even when you're having a good the thought of taking it now makes me feel sick, to be honest. MDMA is quite gross in a way, I think. And the thought of it now, yeah, really I find gross. And if I like smell it, I feel really sick. But it didn't really have any of that. It was a much cleaner, more kind of even buzz that felt more natural, and you felt more clear-headed and more yourself. And it added a level of humour, which I find on MDMA you become like not very funny. But at least that's what I find. Maybe other people have different experience. But acid obviously like makes things often very funny and makes you very funny. So it added that to it. I wouldn't say we ever nailed the candy flip combo as well as that. And kind of coasted so nicely on it. But in general, I've found that combo or other similar combos, like the Nexus flip. I haven't done hippie flipping. I'd like to try it. But I found those to be really good as well. We tried doing it another time. We tried candy flipping, and I'd read online, because I think we tried it like maybe unsuccessfully again, and we were a bit frustrated. It hadn't really ever been what we wanted it to be. And then we were planning on doing it on New Year's Eve, and we were just chilling by ourselves. We weren't going out. We didn't really have it. It had all gone a bit weird with our friends at the time. We didn't really have anything to do, so we were just watching the Hootenanny, and just watching Jules Holland New Year's Eve Hootenanny. And we just decided, I think because we just thought it sounded funny, like, to watch the Hootenanny, so we just decided we were going to do it, even though it's not really something we would like. And we only had like a laptop screen, I think. I don't think we even had it on a TV. Maybe we did have it on the TV. No, we did have it on the TV, yeah. And we were watching that for some reason. And then Tara had like bad stomach problems. She was like stuck like shitting for ages, I think, from the MDMA. And there's a timing you're supposed to do. You take it, and if you go too early, what I read is about 4 hours. I don't remember I think you take the acid, then you wait 4 hours, or it's the other way around. I don't remember. I'm sure it must be the acid first. Maybe it's not 4 hours. That sounds like a really long time. There is something though. There was an amount of time we were supposed to wait, and if you go beyond it, it goes a bit weird. And yeah, basically Tara got like stuck on the shitter, and I kept being like, you can still, while you're shitting, but like she was really, and it ended up it escalated out of control, and we didn't get it right, and it was not very good. It was an okay night. Maybe it was also because we were just sat around watching the Hootenanny, to be honest. It's not a great thing to do, but we built it up so much, again, because it just has a funny name, and like we thought, well, there's music, it might be something we like on there, and it feels like there's a party going on, even though we're just at home. Well, we would have been better off probably just forgetting it was New Year's Eve, not trying to be like, woo, it's New Year's Eve, because it's a bit fucking stupid, isn't it, at that point? So yeah, and since the Hootenanny, don't think I've done it since, but I think of candy flipping very fondly, and I think it has the potential, when it works well, to be a really, really, really brilliant experience that I would like to try and repeat. The only thing is, again, as I said, I'm not hugely keen on the thought of doing MDMA. And what I found with candy flipping, maybe it doesn't necessarily increase the kind of serotogenic depressing side effects of MDMA, but it felt like it increased the kind of just overall exhaustion. Your brain just feels quite knackered, or at least after the hootenanny time, it felt, our brains felt knackered. It just felt like, that was like quite a lot for not much, you know? Yeah, so anyway, yeah, I think that was the whole thing. I don't think I've forgotten anything. I think that was more or less it. Cool. Yeah, all right, nice. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching. Oh, I want to say, my last video before this, Blessings in Disguise, it's a really good video. Please check it out if you enjoy these videos. I can't think of a title for it that's like grabbing. It just sounds fucking boring, but I think it's quite a good one. It's probably my favorite video I've done for this channel, but I didn't want to change the title to something stupid just to make it like clickbaity. But I also was aware when I was making it, like, this is not going to sound a bit boring, but it's good. It's got some good stories in there, I think, personally. Depends what you're into, but yeah, if you like my videos, you might like that. Anyways, check it out. Cool. All right, nice one, guys. Thanks for watching, as usual. Cheers. Oh, and let me know your candy flip experiences in the comments if you have any. I'd be very intrigued to hear.